Hey guys, Cosmic here. Just wanted to apologize for the rather long break between videos. I understand that this is a very late upload as I was mostly occupied with schoolwork as well as other film projects that I was doing.
The bush. Cole got stuck behind a bush.
So this definitely got pushed to the side a little bit, and I just wanted to quickly apologize for that. And I can't say I'm gonna be more on time in the future, but I really appreciate y'all's patience for those who are sticking around waiting for this one. And I just want to say I hope you enjoy this very late upload. I definitely worked hard on it, and yeah, peace. In all my years of managing this channel, this one definitely marks the period in which I've watched the most new releases. I've seen more movies and shows than I ever had previously, and I gotta say that the content overall was actually quite good. Sure, there were some stinkers, which I'll probably cover later, but generally this year had so many bangers that I'm more than able to watch the putrid taste of garbage media out of my mouth. And with how much good stuff came out this year, I figured now would be a good time as any to do a top 10 list of all the best things I watched. Also, in the case of TV shows, I'm going to be covering the new shows that came out this year, as opposed to the new seasons of already pre-existing shows. So while I love Stranger Things Season 4 and The Boys Season 3, and they're definitely some of the best pieces of TV that came out this year, I won't be including them because the shows themselves didn't release in 2022. In case you want me to change up this format in the future, please let me know down below in the comments. And please remember that this is my list. Chances are there's going to be some placements in here you won't agree with. So sorry if you don't see some notable masterpieces in here like Violent Night, Enola Holmes 2, Moonfall.
Sonny! The moon is going to help us!
With that said, to cap off what has been the biggest year on my channel yet, here are my top 10 favorite movies and shows of 2022. Walking out of the theater after viewing The Northman, I can safely say two things. One, my parents were confused as hell. And two, I thought the movie was pretty darn good. Robert Eggers has such a cool visionary style that he incorporates into his films, and what he does here with Norse mythology is absolutely breathtaking. There are so many creative sequences within this film that help craft such a rich and complex world that these flawed characters live in. This unique visual style, mixed in with the Northern Ireland landscapes, and score by Robin Carolyn and Sebastian Gainsborough, does a lot to heighten the atmosphere of the movie. It really seems like Eggers was allowed to express himself here, telling the story that he wanted to, which you gotta respect. While the revenge plot does sound pretty standard, it does a lot for building tension, and takes a few unexpected turns to make things interesting. For me, this is less of an action movie, and more of a slow burn 10th century thriller. But that's not to say there isn't action in this movie. There's bits and pieces of it sprinkled throughout, and when it is present, it's brutal and effective. The cast is also quite good. You're gonna hear me talk about the cast in a lot of these sections, by the way. Alexander Skarsgård is great as the titular animalistic Viking, and Claes Bang and Nicole Kidman do a solid job too. And Anya Taylor-Joy is Anya Taylor-Joy. I don't need to tell you how good she is, it's a given at this point. I may not be as in love with it as a lot of other people are, mostly because I find parts of it to be a bit slow. I still overall had a nice experience with The Northman, and cannot wait to see what Robert Eggers does next. When I first heard about House of the Dragon, I really couldn't care less. After the tragedy that was the final season of Game of Thrones, the announcement of the show seemed like a last-minute cash grab to keep this property alive. And then I actually watched it, and okay, yeah, this show is actually good. Everything about this show brought back so many aspects of what I loved about Game of Thrones to begin with. The grim fantasy setting, the underlying political scheming, the complex and complicated characters, it was all there. The overarching plot revolving around the battle for the Iron Throne does have similar parallels to the main show, but also sprinkles in other interesting elements, such as the history and importance of dragons to the Targaryen family. And although the setting is relatively small, I did appreciate it as we got to understand these characters and their relationships to one another. Additionally, I can't go on without mentioning the amazing performances from all the cast members, especially Paddy Constantine as Viserys, being a special standout. Now, this isn't to say the show is perfect or anything. There are still some flaws that hold it back from being something truly exceptional. The time skips from episode to episode can be kind of jarring, especially in episode 6 when we skip forward into the future by a significant portion of time. Also, certain characters don't seem to age, namely Matt Smith as Daemon and Fabian Frankel as Kristen. But putting those issues aside, this is a fantastic comeback for the franchise, and I cannot wait to see it fall off again at Season 8. Dang, Studio Trigger really popped off, what the hell. Cyberpunk Edgerunners is probably one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. I saw the trailers and thought they looked pretty good, but actually seeing the anime in full form was incredible. Although the original game had its fair share of issues, the world that was built for it was genuinely interesting, and seeing the characters adventure throughout this dystopian landscape was really engaging to watch, and the tidbits of world building were fascinating to discover. The animation is of course amazing, as you would expect from Studio Trigger, with vibrant coloring, fast-paced character movements, and trippy visuals all being used to magnificent effect to represent this cold, dirty, futuristic setting. Whether it be in the chaotic violence of an action scene, or the calm atmosphere when the characters are using their Oculus headsets to go to the moon, the animation complements it all to a T. This is further helped by the banger soundtrack, with there being so many songs that turn standard story beats into memorable, hype-worthy, and devastating moments. From Franz Ferdinand's energetic show opening, or Holly Coggins and Rosa Walton's chill radio theme, it all does wonders for the show. And while I would say the characters are not the most fleshed out, they all still have entertaining and memorable personalities to get you to care about them. There are some issues, such as the pacing being a bit breakneck at times, and the dialogue, while genuinely being pretty good, can be a bit on the nose and unintentionally funny. On the whole though, this is still an amazing show, and even if you are not a fan of anime, I believe you'll definitely get a kick out of it. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is the best Pinocchio movie to come out this year.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own?
The hell was that?
Not really a high bar, but this movie does have its merits and still holds up on its own. Guillermo del Toro has been working on this project since 2008, and with the finished product you can see the hard work put into each frame. Whether that be the characters' movements and unique facial expressions, the vibrancy and color behind each of the environments, and just how every set piece and model was designed with such detail is incredibly beautiful. Along with this, I really enjoyed the story that this version had to tell. The setting of fascist Italy adds a lot to the narrative by showing how Geppetto's son was lost to war, and adds a layer of connective tissue to the events that take place, as opposed to them just being random misadventures that Pinocchio goes on. I also really enjoyed Geppetto and Pinocchio's growth throughout the film. Seeing Geppetto, a broken man grieving the loss of his son, is emotionally engaging, and seeing him slowly open up to Pinocchio as opposed to liking him on the spot is a nice change from how the story is normally told. I also like Pinocchio's character arc, as he starts out as kind of a whiny little shit, but eventually turns kind-hearted and brave by the end of the movie. It also helps that they have such good voice actors, with David Bradley embodying the grief and caring aspects of Geppetto, and Gregory Mann embodying the innocence and inquisitiveness of Pinocchio. There are some aspects about the ending that didn't work for me, and I didn't find the songs particularly memorable, but as a whole, this movie still slaps. Going into Top Gun Maverick with the promises of having real G's and real speed, it certainly had a lot to live up to, but after walking out of that theater, I can safely say that it lived up to the hype. I personally do enjoy the original Top Gun. It is definitely a product of its time and is fairly generic, but I would say there's a fair amount of entertainment value in there. But this film improves on the original on so many levels. For one, I appreciate how it builds on the events of the original to make the story more emotionally impactful. Having Maverick teach this new generation of Top Gun graduates does a lot for his character arc as a leader in this movie, and his conflict with Goose's son Rooster emotionally resonates, especially if you've seen the first film. Additionally, the flying sequences are absolutely absolutely badass. This is arguably the highest selling point of the entire movie, and it easily lives up to the hype. Seeing the main actors actually flying in those fighter jets and taking in all those G's of force does a lot in the way of authenticity for these scenes, as it adds more of a sense of danger and excitement throughout the movie than what would have been achieved if they just went with a simple green screen effect. I also can't neglect the soundtrack by Harold Faltermeyer, Lady Gaga, and Hans Zimmer, with even freaking One Republic popping in. That was unexpected. I guess my main complaint is that a lot of the side characters are fairly one-dimensional and kind of fit into stereotypical tropes. Like, do any of you actually remember Phoenix, Fanboy, Bob? But aside from that, I had a lot of fun with this film. And in terms of pure entertainment value, this is arguably the best thing to come out this year. Why the fuck is the second Puss in Boots movie so good? Out of all the films that came out last year, this is easily the one I had the lowest expectations for, even more so than Edge Runners. I was not expecting this movie to go so hard, but lo and behold, it ended up being one of the best things I watched in 2022. The animation is of course great as predicted, with it definitely having a Spider-Verse feel to it, which can be seen in the vibrant colors and how the frame rate fluctuates within the fight scenes. In terms of pure animation, this might very well be the best thing DreamWorks Animation has ever released. But more than that, I was actually impressed at how well the story and characters were developed throughout. Puss having to contemplate his life choices and him struggling to live up to the facade he constructed for himself is really engaging and makes for a great character arc. I especially like this ongoing fear of death within the film, who is manifested as an actual physical entity. Death himself is also amazingly brought to life with his intimidating design and absolutely incredible voice work by Wagner Moura, and his reasons for killing Puss are actually very compelling. I even found myself becoming attached to characters who I wasn't expecting to, like Kitty Softpaws, who I didn't really care much about in the last film, actually having a compelling character arc about learning to trust others, and Perito, who I initially thought was going to be an annoying comedic sidekick, actually ended up being very wholesome and a charming presence to have. And even the side characters like Goldilocks and the Three Bears all have interesting personalities and have great chemistry with each other. There is really only a single one-dimensional character, that being Jack Horner. But he is supposed to be that way by design, and he's funny so it works out. Definitely the biggest surprise of 2022, and I am eternally grateful that I did not gloss over it. And yes, I did watch it in January 2nd, but it came out in 2022 and it was close enough to that year, so I'm counting it anyways. When I watched Nope the first time around, I thought it was a great movie, although I didn't entirely understand all of it. Upon my second viewing though, I appreciated it a whole lot more. The subtle themes about supervillains and processing trauma all connect a lot more upon multiple viewings. Out of all the movies and shows I watched this year, this one definitely has the most intricate messaging hidden beneath the surface. And even upon my first viewing, I could still admire the horror and comedic elements that are mixed in this film. A balancing act like that is a difficult task to juggle, but Peele still manages to pull it off, as this movie is filled with solid jokes that actually made me chuckle, along with intense moments of claustrophobia and the various UFO scenes. This is also helped by Jordan Peele's direction and writing, with a variety of creative shots, and the movie as a whole is pretty strong in terms of pacing. I thought that the gory sitcom subplot would be a waste of time and would drag out for too long, but it generally works and actually adds to the story when you think about it. And of course, the cast is solid. Daniel Kaluuya does a good job as Haywood Jr., and Stephen Young is great as a child star repressing his traumatic experiences. But of course, Keke Palmer stands out by quite a bit, as she is just so charismatic and fun, and her dynamic with Kaluuya is very enjoyable to watch. The only thing that's close to a critique is that I expected the movie to be a bit scarier. It kind of fits more into the thriller camp rather than horror. But still, terrific film, go give it a watch. Also, that Gordy plot really fucked me up for real. Viewing The Fabelmans was one of the most personally enthralling experiences I have ever had in my life. So much of it seemed like it was designed by Spielberg for people like myself. It does a great job capturing the magic of filmmaking and how someone becomes enamored with the medium. So many of my favorite scenes are just people watching films and seeing the emotions they receive from doing so. Out of all the movies I have seen about making films, this is the first one that truly displays the power of filmmaking and the effects it can have on a person, as well as the bonds that can be forged and broken as a result, which makes the family drama more interesting. as we see Sammy's dream change the dynamics within the family, particularly among his parents. Speaking of, I appreciate how supportive Sammy's parents are in spite of their own issues. It's awesome to see parents that actually support their kids' dreams. And once again, the cast in here slaps. Gabriel LaBelle shines as Sammy Fableman and does a good job balancing the pretentious attitude of an aspiring film kid while also making him likable and sympathetic. Paul Dano does a nice job portraying a kind-hearted but strict father, and Michelle Williams' performance as a caring but emotionally fragile mother was really impressive. Hell, if she were to be nominated for an Oscar for that performance, I wouldn't really be surprised. Honestly, between this and West Side Story, Steven Spielberg has begun to regain his magic that made his movies so impactful in the first place. And I couldn't be happier, because though I'm sure another director could have made a movie like this, it wouldn't feel as personal, profound, and enchanting as his version. Holy shit! DC dominated this year. Peacemaker on its own would have already cemented itself as one of the best comic book adaptations this year, but this is an absolute landslide for them. And it's easily not just one of the best Batman adaptations, but I would argue one of the best comic book movies of all time. This movie is lightning in a bottle, with so many wonderful elements mixed together. You have the absolutely amazing set design, grounding you in this world of corruption and disarray, creating a Gotham that truly looks like it can't be saved. You have the neo-noir story that allows Batman to do some actual detective work against one of the most underutilized villains in his rogues gallery. You have the terrific cinematography by Greg Fraser, making for one of the best visual experiences of this year, and manages to blend all the different styles of the previous Batman movies. You have the intimate and epic score ingraining you into each scene of sadness and action, brought to you by Michael motherfucking Giacchino. You have the amazing performances of Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, Paul Dano, and so many more talented cast members, all bringing their characters to life. And you have the character-centric directing of Matt Reeves, giving us a personal look into Batman's psyche, what drives him, and the many flaws he possesses. With the troubled production this movie had, whether that be with Warner Bros. Interference or the rise of the pandemic, it's amazing that the final product we got was as polished, carefully constructed, and thoughtful as it was. An absolute banger across the board, and in any other year, this might have been my number one. But there is just one movie that is somehow miraculously better. Before we continue though, here are some honorable mentions. The Atom Project, a fun sci-fi movie about Ryan Reynolds meeting younger Ryan Reynolds. Spy X Family, a wholesome anime that is one of the few to actually make me chuckle. The Rehearsal, a unique show with an interesting premise and good comedy. The Menu, a unique movie with an interesting premise and good comedy. Peacemaker, a solid show with cool action, comedy, and character building. And Chainsaw Man, loaded with cool characters, interesting world building, and great animation and action. After watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, I knew without a doubt that it was going to be the best thing that I ever saw in 2022. While all the other movies and shows I watched were great in their own right, the aspect that makes this film the best of the best is the sheer level of imagination and heart that went into it. Whereas you can tie the other pieces of media down to a specific genre, Everything Everywhere All at Once has a bit of, well, everything, and somehow makes it all work. You have an introspective character drama, a wacky off-the-wall comedy, a martial arts action movie, and a sci-fi multiverse movie mixed in with so many other genres, and you somehow manage to pull it off? That is easily one of the best accomplishments to ever be seen in media. Michelle Yeoh is a goddamn treasure, and her role as Evelyn is probably the best of her career to date. Evelyn definitely has that same badass quality we've come to expect from Michelle Yeoh, but you get a lot of attachment for her as you see a woman struggling to come to terms with her seemingly mediocre life. But I definitely gotta give props to Ki Hoi Kwan as Waymond. Coming back to acting after such a long period would be difficult for anyone, but being able to pull off so many different emotions and variations of the same character, that's amazing stuff right there. And it is a testament to Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert's writing that they were able to develop such well-rounded characters in the midst of such a stuffed plot. But what impresses me so much about this movie was the fact that it even exists in the first place. This could have easily turned into a cluttered mess of a movie that wasted the talent of so many people. But instead we get a lifetime experience that we may never see again in a millennium. Most movies that I watch will eventually fade from my memory, but I have a feeling this one will stand the test of time for years to come. So yeah, yeah, those are my picks for the best movies and TV shows of the year. And to be honest, I'm pretty proud of this year's selection. I know people might look at this year as an overindulgence of superheroes and other big franchises. And yeah, I of course agree with that. But buried underneath all the muck and trash were genuine pieces of cinematic gold. I mean, we were able to get one of the best superhero movies and best multiverse movies all in the same year. We got TV shows that revitalized properties that were dragged through the mud. And we saw so much variety in the stories that were told. Having so many creative visions and entertaining pieces of media in one year is truly extraordinary. And no matter how corporate our landscape seems, just remind yourself that in an era where IPs are seemingly all that matters, we were still able to get media like this.